Experiencing a season of self-reliance and independence is absolutely necessary. And I'm going to tell you why. If there's anybody who knows what it's like to be totally desperate for somebody to love them back, it is me. I am a serial monogamist. From the time I was 14 up until I was 33, I was jumping from relationship to relationship. Now, my relationships always lasted a very long time, at least a year, if not several longer. But they always ended up in heartbreak. A lot of times when we are in relationship after relationship, we never get a moment to catch our breath and breathe and reflect on who we are. And when we do this, we can ignore a lot of things about ourselves that we absolutely need to deal with. And instead, we just find the next person who gives us attention and thinks we're pretty, and then we start a life with them. Before you know it, that is why there are so many marriages that are just coexisting, and there's no spark and there's no love, because there's so much resentment that begins to snowball in there due to you or the other person or both not self-reflecting and working on themselves. 99% of us are going to accumulate some form of childhood trauma. This is going to happen from the time you're born all the way through grade school, middle school. A lot of us are going to undergo some form of trauma that is going to shape us in some way throughout our teenage years. And because teenagers aren't fully mature enough mentally, a lot of times we take that childhood trauma and we turn to toxic coping mechanisms so we can fit in with our peer group or be accepted. I say many, if not all, of the coping mechanisms that we accumulate stem from being insecure in some way, shape, or form. When you bring insecurities into a relationship without dissecting and analyzing where those insecurities are stemming from, you are asking for a war. When it comes to my own personal story, I entered high school with no self-esteem due to being bullied in my childhood and being in sped courses and being behind. And I had no self-worth entering high school. So when I entered high school and I had been bullied for my ears, they stuck out. I got surgery the summer before. When I entered high school and now my ears are pinned back, all of a sudden I became hot. And while I was never a cool kid, I was now getting like male attention and I felt like I was kind of fitting in. I took that childhood trauma and I began utilizing alcohol to cope with it. Alcohol made me feel invisible. Alcohol helped me fit in. Alcohol made me a lot more outgoing when I would be around men instead of nervous. And because I never felt pretty my whole childhood and I was always called ugly and monkey and Dumbo, because I truly never felt beautiful, when I would drink alcohol, you bet your ass, I all of a sudden felt like a Victoria's Secret model. Now, I personally know a lot of people who utilized alcohol as their coping mechanism to deal with past trauma. But if you weren't alcohol, chances are maybe you dabbled in drugs, maybe you dabbled in meaningless sex, maybe you dabbled in, I don't know, different peer groups. I don't know. Whatever you did, it didn't help you become a better person. We'll put it that way. So for people who are serial monogamists and they constantly feel like they need to be in a relationship like me, you take your completely destroyed self-worth, and because you can't find it in yourself, you begin to put it in other people's hands. So for me, I'd go into all these relationships and I'd be like, I love you, I love you, I love you, now love me back. And slowly but surely, I'd still be utilizing these toxic coping mechanisms to deal with, dysfunction within the relationship and dysfunction I had in the way I saw myself. It would surface. And what happens when you can't communicate and you can't heal and you can't grow and you blame everybody and everything and you have these pity parties? Well, eventually resentment sets in the relationship, and eventually you're going to have an emotional detachment from your partner. And this has happened in every relationship I've been in. And when this happens, instead of me reflecting and realizing my faults and where I could have been better and what I'm doing, I would just conclude that I'm incapable of being loved. Nobody loves me. I'll never find love. I'm incapable of being loved. Something's wrong with me. And then all of my past would play through my head like a movie, and I'd think of all the horrible choices I had made, and I would validate me being incapable of being loved. And I don't care what y'all say, this is the devil's work, y'all. This is a way to trick your mind into validating that you are never good enough and you're never going to have anyone. So a lot of times when you get this mindset, instead of healing again and reflecting and choosing to enter this season of being alone, we quickly scatter and think, where can I find it next? And then somebody likes your profile picture. Somebody buys you a drink at the bar. Somebody opens the door for you and asks for your number. Like, somebody enters your life. And without a thought, if you have a little bit of an attraction, you're going to jump on it. This person could love me. This could be him. This might be it. And then before you know it, the toxic pattern that has been going on for however many years, for me it was 20 years, it just continues to happen. And I was this person in a relationship where I was so desperate, I can become what you want. And then I would begin to turn into this character of who they might love. At the end of the day, all this did was make me lose myself more. And then my resentment would subconsciously kick in, and I would know that this is not who I am. And I would be with this internal battle of pushing and pulling. And it wasn't until a year and a half ago that I finally was like, you know what? I need to be permanently sober from alcohol. I'm actually almost 2 years sober now, so it was a little over a year and a half. I need to be permanently sober from alcohol. I need to quit putting my worth in other people's hands, because clearly it's never going to be safe with somebody else. I had to finally accept that I need to allow myself to feel feelings, because the fear of the pain of reflecting on 20-something years, 20-something years, the fear of having to feel all of that at once was terrifying. But I knew if I didn't, that this toxic pattern that I'm recognizing, it's going to continue to play out. It's going to continue to happen. And I got to a point where my heart was so tired of being broken that I finally was like, it's time for a change. This change didn't happen overnight. Like I said, a year and a half of being alone and providing for myself and my daughter and just stepping into that and forgiving myself for the past and not letting that define me, accepting what happened, forgiving what happened. It was a process. And within that, I began to work out more, and I began to, pursue different business routes and do things that brought me self-fulfillment. And eventually I realized I didn't need a guy, a partner, to tell me good job or to direct me or to give me my worth. While I didn't get my worth right away, and it's been a very long, painful process, slowly but surely, when I didn't have anybody in my living space to provide me with validation, it kind of forced me to be like, well, I guess I can only count on myself. And in order to do that, I have to do X, Y, and Z to heal and to grow. And so that's what I did. And now I sit here before you, about to be 35 years old, and I'm actually happy. For the first time in my life, I am not looking for a happily ever after. I realize that I'm already living it. And I never needed a Prince Charming to complete that idea. I just needed the idea that I am capable of loving myself and giving myself everything that I absolutely need inside and out. And so while I'm not opposed to a happily ever after, maybe one day, I'm not attached to that anymore. And it's been the most liberating season, and that is why I had to make this video, in case one of you watching this, if you're feeling that way or you're kind of going through the same thing, I just wanted to reveal to you why it's crucial that you have this season of self-reliance and independence. Because when you are left alone, truly, your living space, you're alone. You don't have somebody else in your life distracting you or validating you. That is when real change can occur. And that is when you can find true love for who you are, because you're the only person that's there for you.